try as they might, there are no other launch companies that come close to competing with SpaceX, both in cadence and in customers. And there are a lot of launch companies currently operating or in development, as well as a huge bottleneck for launch right now. There is a large demand to launch payloads. And I'm not just talking about Starlink payloads. That's a whole other topic. I'll get into that. There are other customers out there, a significant number of customers who want to launch, who cannot find rides, or the rides are slower than they want. This comes at a time where this is a very hot topic. There are two competing articles coming out yesterday and today. I will link them below, talking about the launch availability. One of them was more positive, the other one was more negative. One of them focused more on heavy launch, the other one focused more on small launch and launch startups, and I will talk about both. I'm Lara Forsick. I'm the executive director of space consulting firm Astra. I've been tracking launches and launch vehicles for years. And for a long time, it seemed like there were too many launchers for the demand, but now it's completely flipped, and I'll talk about why. And just coincidentally, yesterday I had a client call and they wanted to know, who is able to compete with SpaceX in the near term? Why can't these existing launchers just launch more? Like, what is holding up all of these launchers, the existing ones and the new ones, from just ramping up their cadence and competing with SpaceX? I do want to touch on that for a moment. This topic could probably fill like an hour-long video as to why SpaceX is ahead and will remain ahead for years to come. Probably not forever, but at least for quite some time, they don't have any competitors in the launch arena. Much discussed, of course, is the reusability of Falcon 9, and that helps to not only cut down their costs, but also increase that to return to the pad for those boosters that had been recovered. Another one is the ability to take risks, and so while they are not wanting to blow up their customers' payloads, for example, they are okay with taking heavy risks with their hardware, especially in the developmental stage. Another would be like quite a bit of funding. It didn't start out that way. SpaceX did not start out with significant funding. In fact, it really needed NASA in the beginning to save it from dying. But now it has significant contracts, government contracts, commercial contracts, and Elon Musk personally has quite a bit of money if he wanted to funnel more money into SpaceX. There are probably like 10 other reasons why SpaceX is super competitive in the launch arena. Go ahead and list your favorite reason down in the comments below. I don't want to make this entire video about that because I want to talk about the other launchers. How competitive are they? What is stopping them from launching more and more and more, or even launching at all? I specifically want to focus on the launchers mentioned in the articles I will link below. So while I won't cover every single launcher that is currently operational or in development, I want to touch upon quite a bit of them, starting with United Launch Alliance Vulcan. United Launch Alliance is still operating 2 rockets at this point. So it has Atlas V that it is not currently making any more of. It is transitioning out of them, but it currently still launches them, as well as its new Vulcan rocket, which was delayed significantly. It was really actually Blue Origin's engines that delayed the start of Vulcan for so long. But back in January, we did see the first launch of Vulcan and none since. But they are currently scheduled to launch October 4th. That is their Certification 2 mission. And they say they have 2 additional launches scheduled for 2024. I'll believe that when I see it. The way ULA operates is very single-minded. Not to say that they don't work on other things in the background, but they are very focused on the launch at hand. And they don't really multitask when it comes to their launches. At least they don't anymore. They have been much quicker in the past. For a long time, they were operating both Atlas and Delta. They were launching at a significantly faster pace. But in recent years, that's really ramped down. To give you some idea, in 2024, Atlas V has launched twice so far, with at least 1 more scheduled for Q4 of this year. We don't even have a launch date yet. In 2023, they launched twice with Atlas V. In 2022, they launched 7 times. In 2021, they launched 4 times. And if you keep on going back in history, you'll see that they've launched Atlas V in particular, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times in a year, sometimes more, along with the Delta IV. So in the past, they actually have had more of a cadence, but they've slowed down in recent years. Vulcan will only launch probably twice this year is my guess. However, they have quite ambitious plans, quite un-ULA plans, I might say. By the end of 2025, they expect to launch a couple times a month, or specifically every 2 weeks. And they have never had that cadence before, ever, in all of ULA's history. So that is Ambitious to the point of being unrealistic. Can they get there eventually if they really put their mind to it? Yes. But it's really not in their company culture at this point to be able to launch that frequently. So what they would need to do is not only prove out the Vulcan rocket to be able to launch frequently, but also improve the mindset of their team or the streamline the operations or whatever they need to do to change company culture so that they go back to a higher cadence and surpass it, because they've never had that kind of cadence before, ever. For a company like ULA that is so focused on their 100% success rate, that means that they are not willing to take extra risks, especially when it comes to their government customers, their national security payloads. So they want to keep that 100% success rate, especially since they might be bought out. Their value, and they want a significant value for ULA, their value will decline if they have an incident. So is ULA going to launch every 2 weeks by the end of 2025? No, that's just not happening. But yes, I do think they will ramp up Vulcan as they prove out the vehicle. Blue Origin's New Glenn has similar aspirations, let's say, for a company that has a turtle as part of its symbol and the famous desire to go slowly, step by step, ferociously. They have quite big ambitions for their new big rocket New Glenn, which is currently scheduled for no earlier than November of this year. And just in general, in the launch industry, the closer you get to the end of the year, the much more likely it is to slip to the next year. So if you say no earlier than December, it almost always means the next year, January, February, whatever. So it could be that New Glenn launches this year. It could be that it slips until 2025. But they have high expectations for 2025. Blue Origin expects to launch New Glenn 12 times in 2025. That's monthly. And then ramp that up, double it, in fact, to launch 25 times in a year. They have not done that with New Shepard. They've not even come close to launching in that quickly with New Shepard. So I don't necessarily see how a company that has a company culture of going so slowly can ramp up that kind of cadence anytime soon, let alone in 2025. They do have a new CEO that apparently is pushing the company to do more. Jeff Bezos is involved more in the company, and he is pushing the company to do more. So just like with ULA, they need to change the company culture in order to ramp up to any kind of regular cadence, monthly or more. Ariane 6 has a lot of customers in its books. I actually did a whole video about how competitive Ariane 6 is when it comes to getting customers. So if you want to check that video out, it is right here. Ariane 6 hopes to launch 9 launches per year, so not a huge number, but still quite a significant number. Arianespace traditionally does not launch that much. So if you look back at Ariane 5's history, Ariane 5 launched twice in 2023, 3 times in 2022, 3 times in 2021. So for them to ramp up Ariane 6 to 9 times in a year, that's going to take some work. And this vehicle has only flown once. And we don't really know yet what that kind of cadence, what that kind of turnaround is going to be. Going a little smaller now, there is a company that is ramping up its launch operations, and that is Rocket Lab, specifically with Electron, because Neutron's not on board yet. Rocket Lab, just counting the successful launches, Rocket Lab has launched 10 times so far this year, and they have another 13 or so in their manifest that they wanted to launch this year. They actually had quite a significant number of launches scheduled for this year, and they blame payload delays for the reason why they're not going to make that schedule. But still, 10 this year already, with probably several more to go by the end of this year. I mean, that's pretty impressive ramp up, because in 2023, just counting successful launches, they launched 8 times in 2023, 9 times in 2022, and 5 times in 2021, just ignoring the failures. And so you can see that ramp up. They really do want to increase their cadence. There's no company yet that comes close to reaching SpaceX. SpaceX has launched about 90 times, or maybe more than 90 at this point this year already. And so they're going to easily surpass 100 times this year. Rocket Lab, while 10 times or 20 times, however times they end up launching this year, that's not even close to over 100, but you can see that ramp up. And so you can see in a few years, if they keep on going with Electron, or if they can get Neutron going to that kind of cadence, I think that'd be really, really interesting to see how they compete against SpaceX. They are expecting Neutron, I think in 2025 is the current date for their first test flight for Neutron. Moving on to Firefly, which has had a mix of successes and failures. They had one success in 2024 with another launch scheduled for October 15th, and then multiple others that could happen this year, but probably won't, probably pushed till later, which is better than the one complete success that they had last year with one partial failure. So we can wish them success 1 or 2 times a year. That's pretty slow, but hopefully as they keep on launching successfully, Firefly will ramp up operations because they do have a lot of customers on backlog. And that, by the way, was specifically with their Alpha rocket. They are also developing the Medium Launch Vehicle, which is a very boring name, MLV, with Northrop Grumman. And I think that's supposed to come online sometime next year as well with their first test launch of MLV. Astra is one of those companies that I knew from the moment they started saying that they wanted to launch 300 times in a year was not even going to come close to that. They've had several failures. They did have a successful launch in 2021, a successful launch in 2022, and at this point, they just went private. They were public. They went through the SPUC. I have a video on Astra about going private again if you want to look that up. There's no telling whether or not this company can come back. I mean, I wish them the best. ABL is another company that I really thought would be a little bit more successful than it has been. They haven't had a successful launch yet of their RS-1. In fact, they just lost one of their RS-1 rockets this summer. They've not only delayed their next test flight, they are also starting to lay off staff. So best of luck to ABL. I hope you can come back as well. Relativity similarly had a lot of problems, a lot of failures with its previous rocket. Is currently working on the Terran R, which is currently scheduled for a test flight no earlier than 2026. Space One's Kiros is currently scheduled for December 2024, but based on what I just said about how December launches tend to slip into January or February or whatever, who knows that they'll actually launch this year. But it sounds like they're really close. Our Aerospace's Spectrum is also targeting by the end of this year. Orbex's Prime is currently scheduling a test launch for no earlier than 2025. PLD Space's Miura 5 is currently scheduled for about summer of 2025 when their pad is ready. Latitude's Zephyr is looking at no earlier than the end of 2025, which almost guarantees it'll be no earlier than 2026. Sirius Space Services is looking at a Sirius 1 test in mid-2026. Rocket Factory Augsburg, I feel for them. I actually did a video on their recent incident if you want to check that out. They were hoping for a test launch like this year. They lost their rocket, so now they're aiming for next year, 2025. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries H3 is looking at 2027. That is not a complete list of launchers, but that is a representation of who was at the World Business Space Week, which Space News covered in the article that I've linked below. So to go back to my question of who is even close to competing with SpaceX and getting over 100 launches in a year, no one. No one comes even close. No one will come even close for years to come. But I don't believe that there won't be any competition ever for SpaceX in terms of launch. I do believe that there is plenty of room for a lot of these launch companies to find their niche and to be able to ramp up not just customers, but also launches so they can deliver for their customers. The biggest problem that I hear from people who are awaiting launches is that they've been awaiting launches for so long, some of them months, some of them years. And so right now, there is such an opportunity for any one of those launch companies to snap up so much of the market that is awaiting their ride to space. Launch is a tough business, so I really feel for those who are trying to do something very hard. And I wish them the best.